3 summers ago, I had a Halcyon Hosta in the shadiest corner of my back garden that looked absolutely perfect every May. The blue-green leaves came up full and lush, and I would stand there genuinely proud, thinking I had finally figured this plant out. By mid-July, it was a completely different picture. Yellowing leaves, brown crisping edges, the whole clump looking like it was quietly giving up. I had not changed a single thing. Same watering schedule, same spot, same fertilizer I had been using for 2 years. The garden had not changed at all. But everything about July had, and that was exactly the problem. Here is what I eventually understood after making this mistake 2 summers in a row. Hostas do not follow the same rules in July that they follow in May. The care that built those perfect spring leaves can actually damage the plant once summer arrives. The watering habit that was fine in April becomes a slow problem by July. The location that gave perfect light in spring becomes the worst possible spot by midsummer. Every year, gardeners unknowingly stress perfectly healthy hostas by continuing to do in July exactly what worked in May. Today, I am going to show you exactly what changed, why it matters, and the specific adjustments that will keep your plants lush and healthy for the rest of the season. There is a very good chance you are making at least one of these mistakes in your garden right now. If you are new here, welcome to the Gardening Grandma. Hit that subscribe button right now. Let us get into this. Let me start with the watering mistake I see most often, because it is the one that does the most quiet damage. When gardeners see their hostas wilting in summer heat, the first instinct is to reach for the hose every evening and give the plant a quick drink. It feels like exactly the right thing to do. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. That habit of daily shallow watering is one of the fastest ways to create a weak, stressed plant. Hostas do not need constant watering. They need deep watering. An established hosta needs roughly 1 inch of water per week, delivered in 1 or 2 slow, thorough soaking sessions, not a light sprinkle every evening. Here is why that distinction matters so much. Roots grow where the moisture is. If you are only wetting the top inch of soil each day, the roots stay near the surface. Surface roots are the first to dry out in a heat wave. The plant becomes entirely dependent on you showing up every single evening. Miss one day during a brutal July stretch and the leaves begin collapsing because the root system was never encouraged to grow deeper where the soil stays cool. Here is the habit I use every time before watering. I push a finger 3 to 4 inches into the soil beside the plant. If it is dry at that depth, the hosta needs water. If it still feels cool and slightly damp, I leave it alone. That one small habit eliminates almost every watering mistake. You stop watering because the calendar says Tuesday. You water because the soil actually needs it. But even perfect watering habits cannot solve every problem, because not every hosta in your garden is working with the same conditions. A hosta growing beneath a mature maple tree is competing with a root system that pulls enormous amounts of moisture from the surrounding soil every single day. A hosta planted under a roof overhang may receive almost no rainfall, even after a heavy storm, because the eave diverts every drop away from it. The surrounding beds get soaked, the hosta stays bone dry. I had a planting along my garage wall that struggled for 2 full summers before I finally understood this. These plants often need hand watering, even after what looks like a perfectly adequate rain. One more watering habit that opens the door to serious problems. Spraying the entire plant and soaking the leaves. Wet foliage that stays damp overnight is an open invitation for fungal disease. Always direct the water at the soil. Keep the leaves as dry as possible, and always water in the morning. Morning watering means any moisture that reaches the leaves has the entire sunny day to evaporate before dark arrives. Evening watering leaves everything damp for hours. That is exactly what fungal disease needs to get started. If your hosta lives in a container, July becomes a completely different challenge. Container hostas are beautiful. They work wonderfully on shady porches and patios, but they are living under conditions that are fundamentally different from plants in the ground. Garden soil acts as insulation. Several inches below the surface, it stays surprisingly cool even during heat waves. Containers do not have that protection. The walls of a pot absorb sunlight all day. Dark plastic and dark ceramic pots become especially hot. That heat transfers directly into the soil and eventually into the root ball itself. The leaves may look perfectly fine. Meanwhile, underground, the roots are experiencing temperatures far higher than anything in your garden beds. Many gardeners think they are seeing drought stress in their container hostas. Very often it is heat stress inside the pot. The solutions are simple. Group containers together so they shade one another. Place a smaller dark pot inside a larger light-colored decorative planter. The air gap between the two acts like insulation and dramatically reduces how much heat reaches the roots. Even moving a container just a few feet into deeper shade during the hottest weeks can make an enormous difference. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. Every time you water a container thoroughly, water carries dissolved nutrients out through the drainage holes with it. During July, when container hostas may need watering every single day, that constant flushing gradually strips away everything the plant depends on. Garden hostas draw from the surrounding soil. Container hostas only have what is inside the pot. Once those nutrients are gone, they are gone. This is why gardeners often see beautiful spring growth followed by disappointing midsummer performance. The plant is not sick. The soil has simply been depleted by weeks of thorough watering. Very light diluted feeding every few weeks while the plant is actively growing replaces what the water keeps washing away. But timing matters, and we will come back to that. Now I want to talk about something that catches gardeners off guard every single summer. The perfect hosta location in April can become the worst possible location in July. The sun changes, its angle shifts higher, trees leaf out differently as the season progresses, shadows move. Areas that receive soft, gentle morning light in spring can suddenly receive hours of harsh, direct afternoon sun by midsummer. That is why hostas look spectacular all spring only to begin struggling once summer peaks. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. Between noon and 4 in the afternoon, sunlight becomes dramatically more intense than at any other time of day. Those 4 hours determine whether many hostas thrive or slowly burn. A spot that receives gentle morning sun followed by afternoon shade is usually ideal. A spot blasted by direct sun from noon until 4 is where the problems start. Experienced gardeners walk their garden in midsummer and observe where the shadows actually fall at 2 in the afternoon. That walk often reveals problems that were completely invisible back in May. Scorched leaves are permanent. I want to be direct about this because many gardeners believe that once the heat passes, the damaged leaves will somehow recover. They will not. When a hosta leaf develops pale, papery patches or brown, crisping edges, that tissue is dead. No fertilizer reverses it. No tonic repairs it. No amount of water restores it. The crown of the plant usually survives just fine and will produce a perfect fresh set of leaves next spring. But your job right now is to stop more leaves from being damaged. Correct the light exposure immediately. The sooner you do that, the better the rest of the season will be. If you grow blue hostas, there is one more thing you absolutely need to know. Blue hostas are not actually blue. Their leaves are naturally green. That beautiful powder blue appearance comes from a delicate waxy coating on the surface of the leaf. Intense afternoon sun gradually melts that wax away. Once it is gone for the rest of the season. Nothing restores it. The only way to see that blue again is to wait for a fresh set of leaves next spring. That is why blue hostas like Halcyon and Blue Angel deserve the shadiest locations in the garden. Protect the wax and you protect the color. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Drop your US state or your USDA hardiness zone in the comments right now. I read every single one. Where you are growing changes everything about hosta care, your summer heat, your humidity, your rainfall, your frost dates. It helps me bring you advice that actually fits your specific garden. Just your state, just your zone, And if you have not subscribed yet, please do that right now. New gardening guidance every week right here, completely free. Not all hostas handle July the same way, and understanding the differences will save you a lot of frustration. Walk through any nursery, and you will notice enormous variation in hosta leaves. Some are thick, deeply corrugated, almost leathery. Others are thin and smooth and nearly paper-like. That difference matters far more in July than it does in spring. Large, heavily textured varieties like Sum and Substance tolerate difficult summer conditions much better. Their heavier leaves resist scorching more effectively and offer greater resistance to certain pests because that tougher tissue is simply harder to penetrate. Thin-leafed varieties require considerably more protection. The same is true for hostas with heavily variegated white centers or margins. White leaf tissue contains very little chlorophyll. It is beautiful but fragile. These plants burn faster, lose moisture faster, and show stress earlier than solid green varieties do. If you own one of these delicate cultivars, never assume it can handle the same conditions as the darker green hostas elsewhere in your garden. It simply cannot. Here is something that changed the way I think about summer shade. You do not have to rely only on trees. One of the smartest long-term strategies is companion planting. Surrounding a hosta with taller perennials or shrubs positioned to the south or west means those companions intercept the harshest afternoon rays. The hosta still receives plenty of filtered light, but the brutal direct sun never reaches the leaves directly. This recreates a natural woodland understory, which is exactly the environment hostas evolved to thrive in. Instead of reacting to summer damage every year, you design the garden so the problems never develop in the first place. That shift from reacting to designing is one of the biggest differences between gardeners who struggle with hostas and the ones whose plants get bigger and better every single year. Mulch is one of the best things you can give a hosta in summer. 2 to 4 inches of shredded bark, leaf mulch, or pine needles keeps soil cooler, slows evaporation, suppresses weeds, and gradually improves the soil as it breaks down. I have seen it transform struggling hostas in a single season, but there is one critical detail that separates gardeners who use mulch well from those who quietly damage their plants with it. Never pile mulch directly against the stems. The crown of a hosta needs to breathe. Mulch pressed against it traps moisture, blocks airflow, and keeps the base of the plant constantly damp. That is precisely where crown rot begins, and once it takes hold, recovery is difficult. Always leave 2 to 3 inches of bare soil around the center of the plant. Mulch the roots. Never bury the crown. It is a small detail, but it is the difference between healthy hostas and declining ones. Now let us talk about fertilizer, because this is where I see well-intentioned gardeners cause real damage every July. Hostas planted in good garden soil with compost worked in over the years are surprisingly light feeders. What they absolutely do not need is a heavy nitrogen feeding in late summer. Nitrogen pushes soft, tender new growth. That fresh growth does not have enough time to harden before cold weather arrives. When the first frost comes, that tender tissue is damaged first. Instead of helping next year's performance, late feeding actually weakens it. My rule now is simple. Stop fertilizing garden hostas by the end of July. Let the plant begin its natural preparation for dormancy. Container hostas are the one exception because nutrients wash out so quickly with frequent watering. A single light, balanced feeding in early July is appropriate for those. After that, stop completely and let the plant slow down on its own. There is a very good chance that what looks like mystery damage on your hostas is actually slugs. Slugs spend the day hiding beneath boards, rocks, dense mulch, and overturned pots. Once darkness arrives, they emerge and feed with surprising efficiency. A healthy-looking hosta can look completely different after just a few nights of slug activity. The most effective approach I know costs almost nothing. Go outside about an hour after sunset with a flashlight and check your hostas carefully. Handpick every slug you find and drop them into a container of soapy water. Repeat this for 3 consecutive nights. You will remove a remarkable number of them and see the difference almost immediately. Then reduce the shelter they depend on. Clear unnecessary debris around the plants. Thin, overcrowded vegetation, a drier garden with better airflow, is far less inviting to slugs. If you prefer a passive approach, iron phosphate pellets work well and break down naturally without posing risks to pets or wildlife. If you notice perfectly defined yellow or brown streaks running between the veins of a leaf, that is a different problem entirely. Those straight angular markings that follow the leaf's own structure can indicate foliar nematodes, microscopic worms that spread through films of water sitting on leaf surfaces. This is one more reason overhead watering causes problems. If you suspect foliar nematodes, remove the affected leaves immediately and dispose of them in household trash. Never compost them. Then switch strictly to soil-only watering. Early action can dramatically limit further spread. One more problem every hosta gardener hopes they never encounter: Hosta virus X. This does not look like ordinary yellowing. Growth becomes distorted. Foliage looks wrong in a way that is hard to describe, but immediately alarming once you know what you are looking for. There is no cure. Remove the plant completely and dispose of it with household trash. Then disinfect every tool that touched it with undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide before using it anywhere else in the garden. That one extra step can prevent spreading the virus through your entire collection. Let me bring everything together. Water deeply and infrequently, and check the soil 3 to 4 inches down before reaching for the hose. Pay close attention to what your specific location is actually delivering, because trees, roof overhangs, and nearby hard surfaces change everything about how much water and heat your plants actually receive. Keep the foliage dry and always water in the morning. Protect container roots from heat and replace the nutrients that frequent watering washes away. Walk your garden in the afternoon during midsummer and observe where the harshest sun falls between noon and 4. Protect blue hostas specifically to preserve that waxy coating. Give thin-leafed and heavily variegated varieties extra shade because they cannot handle what your tougher green hostas can. Mulch the roots generously, but keep it away from the crown. Stop fertilizing by the end of July. Stay ahead of slugs with evening checks. And watch closely for foliar nematodes and Hosta virus X, because early action is the only thing that limits both. Hostas are not demanding plants. They ask for conditions close to what a woodland floor naturally provides: filtered light, consistent moisture, cool roots, good airflow. Get that right in July and they will reward you with richer color, larger clumps, and stronger roots year after year. Now I want to hear from you. What is the biggest hosta challenge you are dealing with right now? And which of these adjustments are you going to make first? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and your questions shape what I bring to this channel every single week. Until next time, happy gardening. Take care of yourselves and take care of those beautiful gardens of yours.